Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Happy Friday. Hope the traffic wasn't too bad out there. I know it was pretty testy this morning coming in. I went 0 minus hours, miles an hour, but finally made it in. Hope none of you have been affected by all of these wildfires that are happening now as we speak and growing as we speak. Um, if so, or if you're even close, I hope you've prepared. It's just awful. So we'll keep all of those folks certainly in our thoughts. We still do not have a governing board member appointed to this committee. I'm not quite certain if the chair is waiting until the last board member has been appointed by the governor so that he's got a wide range. I'm not quite certain. But again, you're stuck with me, so my apologies for that. But I'll try to do the best that I can. If we can have an approval of the July 26, 2019 meeting minutes.
Second.
All right. All in favor by a show of hands? Question? Motion passed. There are, do we have any follow-up items? I don't believe so. No follow-up items. All right, so we'll move right on into our discussion items. Today we're going to have an update on the AB 617 process. I know you're all familiar with it. I've had the privilege of being personally involved with it, and it's quite exciting. In the beginning, we were all unsure of what we were doing. A year later, we certainly have lessons learned. But more importantly, we've gone into the community and we've made inroads. I think we've established trust where there wasn't trust before. We certainly have learned a lot with working with the communities, and I think the communities have learned a lot from South Coast AQMD and about South Coast AQMD. Intensive work, a lot of money spent, but well worth it. Finally, the recognition that has been needed for many, many years by the political process is there in the community. So we're working hard to keep that funding coming through. It is a year-to-year funding base, so we're working hard on that. But we appreciate being in the community and doing the work that we do. Having said that, our presenter today is Gina Treviso. Gina's a senior public information specialist, but more importantly, she's one of our liaisons that we have appointed to work in the communities individually. So the community has one point of contact and someone that they can get familiar with and is familiar with them personally and the community's issues personally. So Gina, having said that, you're on.
Thank you, Fabian. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gina Treviso, and I am with the AB 617 group in the Legislative Public Affairs and Media Division. Today, I will be providing a brief update on all the hard work that staff, the community, and steering committee members have been doing for the AB 617 program. Implementation of AB 617 has helped advance our environmental justice goal of improving local air quality in the most impacted and disadvantaged communities within South Coast AQMD's jurisdiction. In the first part of my presentation, I will discuss our year one activities and development of the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, also known as the CERP. In the second part of my presentation, I will discuss what we are doing to gear up for year two. So let's recap year one. Year one began in October of 2018. 3 communities were selected and approved for AB 617 implementation. These were Wilmington, Carson, and West Long Beach, San Bernardino and Muscoy, and Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles, and West Commerce. Staff worked within each community in order to form a community steering committee, or CSC as we call them, in each of those 3 communities. CSC members include active residents and community leaders, local business owners, workers, labor union members, community organizations, representatives of local government, representatives of many elected officials, and those representing several schools and hospitals. Since the formation of these CSCs, our staff has been very busy. We have held over 30 CSC meetings, more than 60 individual meetings with community stakeholders, 3 community-led bus tours using zero emissions buses, 6 community workshops, and 3 technical advisory group meetings. These technical advisory group meetings were comprised of 2 to 3 members of each community steering committee, as well as technical experts from academia, various research institutes, and other governmental agencies. So there was a lot of work that staff and community members completed together, is my point, this first year. For instance, at each CSC meeting, we often had a community co-host. We had numerous committee member presentations, community testimonials, the 3 community bus tours I just mentioned, public comment opportunities at each CSC meeting, and staff on hand to answer specific questions at the conclusion at each one of these meetings. We were sure to provide Spanish interpretation at each meeting and provided documents in both Spanish and English. And last month, on September 6th, our governing board approved the 3 community emission reduction plans, or CERPs, as they're known. Each CERP derived from community-driven efforts. Staff really made themselves available for individual meetings outside of and in addition to these CSE monthly meetings in order to listen to community members' concerns and in order to work on the issues that they raised. These one-on-one meetings allowed us to learn more about community members' biggest air quality priorities and proved invaluable when it came time to create specific strategies to address these concerns. For instance, now included in each CERP are a host of actions designed to improve air quality that were created specifically for that community. To be more specific, across the 3 CERPs, there are 49 actions totaling approximately 160 steps, including 28 specific actions designed to reduce emissions. Each action includes a host of strategies, steps, timelines, and metrics to track progress with collaborating entities. And now we are moving forward to year 2. Meaning we are moving from CERP development to CERP implementation. Implementation will now be the focus of our CSC meetings, which will be held quarterly rather than monthly, beginning in January of 2020. Building on these 2018 efforts, staff has also worked on selecting various communities for year 2 of the program to recommend to our governing board. And the AB 617 program specifies that the highest priority areas will be disadvantaged communities with a high cumulative exposure burden for criteria of pollutants and/or toxic air contaminants. Thus, staff built on the technical evaluation from the prior year, i.e. CalEnviro screen, air pollution data, school proximity to sources, and also built on the public outreach process. We gathered extensive community input and conducted extensive public outreach in general. We then used that criteria and information to help prioritize these year 2 selections. 6 dedicated outreach meetings were held between February and June of 2019 in the 4 counties under AQMD's jurisdiction. These meetings were held in North Shore, Buena Park, Colton, Huntington Park, Carupa Valley, and Southgate. At each meeting, staff presented a summary of the year 1 process and explained how to submit a self-nomination form to community members. This year, we received a total of 77 community self-nomination forms. So what was the approach on how we prioritized communities for both years 1 and 2? Well, based on criteria developed by our planning staff, the following factors were taken into consideration when making the community recommendations for this program. Step 1 was to look at the technical data and the community nominations received for all communities. Step 2 was to separate the communities by air basin, meaning the South Coast Air Basin and the Salton Sea Air Basin. Step 3 involved applying the screening criteria, such as MATES and CalEnviro screen, for the basins, while taking into account various considerations of the Salton Sea Air Basin, for example. Step 4 involved evaluating additional factors, such as updated air monitoring findings, school proximity metrics, and community plans. Lastly, in Step 5, community readiness was considered, meaning how prepared, how organized, and how open was each community to partnering with government agencies and other stakeholders. So in 2018, back then our governing board approved the community of Southgate, Florence-Firestone, Walnut Park, and Huntington Park. However, this community was not approved by the California Air Resources Board in 2018 due to limited resources available for implementation. This year, while the boundary has been modified a bit, this community has again been recommended by our governing board. In fact, our updated recommendation now includes the unincorporated areas of Florence-Firestone. They're on the screen. It's the eastern portion. The Walnut Park, Southgate, the western portion of Huntington Park, the southern portion of Bell Gardens, and Cudahy. Part of the rationale behind selecting this Southeast Los Angeles community includes that it is a densely populated community that's part of the Alameda Corridor. It's an industrial area with a cargo rail line that links to the ports, to the rail lines near downtown Los Angeles. There are several industrial areas in the eastern portion of the community, as well as the 710 freeway, which of course is frequented by numerous heavy-duty diesel trucks, as we know. The second proposed community is Eastern Coachella Valley, which includes Indio, Coachella, Thermal, Oasis, Mecca, and North Shore. Just to provide more information to those who may not be familiar with this area, the Eastern Coachella Valley is a rural community that stretches from the city of Indio to the Salton Sea and is located in the Salton Sea Air Basin within Riverside County. Multiple sources of pollution exist in this region, such as agricultural activities, construction activities, unpaved roads, the goods movement, some industrial facilities, hazardous waste facilities, and the exposed Salton Sea Playa. The area scored in the 90th.8 percentile for CalEnviro Screen 3.0. So as you can see from those factors just mentioned, including the Eastern Coachella Valley and the AB 617 program would be a great opportunity for the South Coast AQMD to have a model done for improving air quality in a rural, underserved community in particular. I'm missing a slide here, but we have let me break down a timeline. There's a timeline of important AB 617 events that I want you to know about. This past February through June were our dedicated outreach meetings for year 2. And June 30th, 2019 was the deadline for communities to submit their self-nomination forms. Let me make sure it's not. No. Okay. In September 2019, our governing board made their year 2 community recommendations. And here we are now, in October 2019, where our staff has now submitted our year 2 recommendations to the California Air Resources Board. In December of this year, the California Air Resources Board will consider these recommendations of ours. And beginning in January of 2020, if CARB approval is received, we will form community steering committees for these 2 new communities and begin holding regular CSC meetings in each of these areas. There's my timeline. Okay. Lastly, I just want to bring to your attention the 5 community liaisons, including myself, which we have in place for these communities in our Legislative Affairs Division. I have listed our names and contact info here, and we're always happy to answer any AB 617 questions you may have. With that, I'll go ahead and end my presentation and open the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Are there any questions? Any comments? Retta?
Okay. Very good. Thank you for sharing. It's very informing. I appreciate that. Since the goal is improving air quality in these communities, when do you expect to see some results? How are they measured? And, well, those two main things.
That's an ongoing process. It'll be different in each community, obviously, and we'll have varying results depending on what we're talking about here. But for instance, for the year one communities, we're going to start meeting now, as I mentioned, quarterly next year, because now it'll start being implemented. So we expect within the next few years, up to the next 5 years actually, to keep going into those communities quarterly to discuss, hey, here's where we see improvement. Here's what's going on with this. Let's just discuss how this is working out, ways we can improve. Here's what we've tracked or measured so far. We'll have various ways to do this depending on what type of source we're talking about, of course.
Dr. Gosh, does your team have any more specifics on metrics, or did she cover that pretty well?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jo Kagosh. I'm the Health Effects Officer here at South Coast AQMD. I mean, I think Gina gave a pretty good overview of the process and roughly the time frame that it's going to take to implement these plans. One of the things that is included in these plans are specific emission reduction targets. So basically, how much we're going to reduce in each community and of which pollutants. And so those are actually included in each of the plans. I don't specifically have them memorized, I will say, but I would want to mention that one of the main focus areas in terms of emission reductions has been diesel particulate matter, because we saw in each of these three communities that was the risk driver when it comes to air toxics risk. So that was a big piece of the focus. I would also mention that this is a collaborative effort between our agency, which has primary authority over stationary sources, and a CARB, which has primary authority over mobile sources. And as we know, diesel particulate matter, the bulk of the emissions are from mobile sources, such as trucks and ships and cargo handling equipment in these communities. The emission reductions are going to come from a combination of our efforts at South Coast AQMD, in addition to CARB efforts, particularly on the regulatory side. I also want to mention that we have actually started implementation even ahead of the CARB board giving their final approval on these emission reduction plans, because we feel like there are so many things that are well within our wheelhouse, and there's really no reason why we need to kind of sit and twiddle our thumbs and whatever else, right? You know, our board has adopted the plans, and so we actually have begun certain aspects of implementation, including the monitoring, which actually was required to begin in July. We have done some monitoring, and our enforcement staff has actually had a lot of follow-up based on some of the some key findings that we've found through the monitoring efforts, as well as conducting idling truck sweeps in these communities. So we've actually already started to do that and provided an update on those activities at our last community meetings.
Just curious, what does an idle truck sweep look like?
I don't have the specifics, and I also do want to mention that I do know our enforcement team likes to keep things a little, under wraps, right? Because there is this bit of an element of surprise when it comes to doing these idling sweeps. But I think in the general case, what they do is they kind of scope out a certain area. And one thing to note about the regulation is actually a CARB regulation, which we can enforce. It has kind of specific provisions, and it has stricter provisions when you are very close to, say, a school or a residential area or hospital or places where sensitive people may spend time. And so oftentimes we do those sweeps in those types of areas because those provisions are stricter, and it may be it may be kind of more fruitful than, say, doing it in an industrial area where a lot of the trucks there are a lot of trucks present, typically in industrial areas, but they may be queuing, they may be on their way to a work site, and that is not a violation of that rule, right? So that is kind of roughly what it looks like. They may be there for several hours. Sometimes I do know that when a violation is noticed, if the driver is awake, then we will contact we will talk. Speak with the driver and give them this citation. Oftentimes, when we find these situations, the drivers may be taking their naps. But nonetheless, they are not allowed to be idling in those areas while they are taking their naps. So in those cases, we do not wake up the driver for safety reasons.
David, you have a question?
Yes, colleagues, I apologize. I haven't been around for a couple of meetings, so I'm back and I'm asking questions.
Welcome back.
On the year 2 proposal for Firestone and Huntington Park, I kind of missed. It was not designated by CARB last year. This is a second go round. I'm just trying to follow the money. And was it a scoring issue, or was it just too many proposals in and was competing with? And what's the difference between this year and last year? I see there's 3 projects that came through and got funded, and then we have 2 going forward for year 2. What's going to better the chances that it'll be on the same page?
I think that's a pretty complex question. I think so. For the first year, I can't remember how many communities across the state were being recommended by either the air districts or members of the community, but it was a lot, and I think it was pretty challenging for them to trim it down to 10 communities across the state, which is still a substantial workload for all those air districts. One of the big limitations, of course, is the funding that we're getting from the state to be able to implement this program. So I think that was certainly one of the limitations, both from on an air district level as well as on a statewide level. As far as what could improve the chances of these 2 communities that we're putting forward in year 2 to be approved by CARB. I certainly know that this is the process that every year they can add new communities. I do know that we have an additional year of funding that's been allocated by the legislature, statewide funding. I think it still needs to be divided among the air districts.
Is it higher than last year, or is it about the same?
It's the same. It's actually the same. I believe it was $50 million statewide.
Which sounds like a lot of money.
Which sounds like a lot, but it's funny because oftentimes we think of this as to say like, oh, okay, well it's something that you're working at a community scale. It does not mean that the effort is scaled down, right?
Okay, so how much is this? It's really not about the money then. It's about the capacity to deliver the program. Is that what you're saying?
Which cost money. So it is about the
Right.
money too.
I think a big piece of it is really staff time, and so some of that funding obviously went to fund staff positions, and I think for us as a government agency and a union shop, it's like we had to have those considerations when when budgeting for what capacity we would have to support this program.
Well, I hope if we're just asking for 2, how many did we ask for last year?
So last year we put in for 4 and we got 3.
Hopefully we get 2 this year. Okay, thank you.
I didn't see whose card went up first. Okay, Humberto.
Yeah, I just, excuse me. Yeah, I just have a comment or a thought. I've seen when CARB does these unannounced inspections in some parts of the state. They're unannounced, but they've partnered with other agencies or intra-agency kind of inspections where, I know our focus here is air pollution, but say intra-agency that, because a lot of these communities have other concerns, toxics, air pollution, pesticides, whatever these trucks are carrying, right? And I've seen where some of these inspections have happened, DTSC will be there, other agencies are there, and they're able to catch more than just the idling vehicle. They're able to identify that they're transporting illegal vehicles that aren't even registered to the state of California or other hazardous materials. And I think it's important to think about it that way because a lot of these communities in the AB 617 meetings, they ask for more. They ask for more, and showing that you can do more and setting up making sure that these agencies are working together might bring a little bit of more of a little bit more ease to those communities. Kind of like, so what they're going beyond just looking at the air pollution, because these are all the concerns in our neighborhood. So that's all I wanted to add. So.
Thank you, Humberto. Raphael.
Excuse the glasses. I'm not trying to look cool. It's just my.
But you
eyes
are looking pretty cool.
My eyes got dilated, so bright lights. So I just wanted to add and make a comment, just in the spirit of Humberto and what he was saying. It might be a good topic for the next interagency workshop to start broadening some of the things that we're discussing in the interagency workshop. I know we're trying to deal with communication and referrals and all that other stuff, but I think, as we move forward, because our meetings are so spaced out, I think we need to look at, and this gets to my original point of, I think we should all do more, and not just wait around for our communities to be identified in the AB 617 or any other type of program that might come along. There are things that we could be doing, like for instance, I'll give you a for instance. So one of the areas that I was hoping to see eventually come into the AB 617 umbrella was South LA, and those kind of areas. But there's other programs that are and other focus by, like for instance, the city of Los Angeles's Mayor Garcetti's Green New Deal, and trying to bring awareness and other resources into the area. But I think we should partner with our city representatives, and just ask them to bring in heads of departments and really discuss, what we can be doing now, whether it's improving city services or county services, or, partnering with various agencies and stuff, and just in small groups, bringing them together and really help identifying things that were identified in the AB 617 process. So it's a learning curve, right, that we all went through. But we were able to identify some really low-hanging fruit, and I think we could identify the low-hanging fruit to the officials that really need to know, and those agencies that really need to know. And so I think we all need to just play a more active role in each of our communities and really push those issues forward. So that way, it's not just another study that's coming into our communities. It's not something that's being written about as far as a report is concerned, but actually tangible action. And action is what we need now. We can't wait any longer. We've waited years and years and years, and I think we tend to go around in circles that way, because we have so many reports written on this community. I know Boyle Heights, and I know the Wilmington area. We have lots of data already. We just need action. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Who do we? Oh, hi. There you go, Carrie.
Testing. Okay. So, understanding that AB 617, the legislative intent was for community engagement. I was wondering if you had developed goals for year one, goals for year two, goals for year three. From the perspective of being successful, right? If after all of these millions of dollars have been spent, then how do you define success, right? I mean, after year one, what was successful, and what do you expect out of year three at the end?
Great. So I guess, pertaining to the community emission reduction plans in particular, which I would mention is really just one aspect of AB 617. We actually did put in specific timelines of, what we anticipate, would be accomplished in each year. That this plan is being implemented. And so I think, what we're looking to do at this point is to put together, some kind of tracking mechanism that, would be shared perhaps on our website to show, what's been accomplished so far. I do want to get a little bit more specific in terms of some examples of the actions that we included in these plans, and then what types of milestones, for example, and metrics might be associated with those actions. So, for example, in our Wilmington community, one of the actions was to amend one of the rules, right? Amend one of the existing rules for the purpose of reducing certain types of emissions, right? And so some milestones would be, for example, if rule development has begun, if working group meetings have been held, if draft language for the rule has been released, and of course, finally, when if that rule has been adopted, and then through that rule development process and the technical analysis that's associated with that process, how much emission reductions are associated with the implementation of that rule, and when would those emission reductions happen. So that's just one example of an action, and then the kind of associated, well, you can imagine as we're moving forward in the CERP implementation timeframe, we can provide updates as in terms of, in this quarter, we held a working group meeting, in this past year, we've adopted these, the board has adopted these certain rules, and then and we've begun rule development on these other additional rules, and we anticipate bringing them to the board in this year, right? So I think those are some examples of how we kind of track progress and success in terms of implementing the plans. I do think that ultimately, one really important measure of success, of course, are the emission reductions that are associated with these plans. And that is something that we will also be tracking. Rules are obviously one tool that we can use to achieve emission reductions, but there are other methods as well. So that includes incentive programs where we track. Oftentimes, it's a scrap and replace type program. So basically, they take an older piece of equipment, like an older truck, and then we have information about how much that's been used in terms of their emissions, right, in our region, and then they're replacing it with a newer technology that's lower emitting, right? So you can calculate that difference, right, and that would be a measure of emission reductions associated with that one project.
So it sounds like you were defining success by having 85 different rules, community meetings, and identifying rules that could be amended with the end goal of reducing emissions and cleaning up the air. But from what I've learned about AB 617, the intent is not necessarily to clean up the air, but is for community engagement.
I'd say I think there are I think these aims are not separate. I think they are actually both integral to the program. So I certainly do agree that community engagement is a really important part of AB 617, and I think our staff from our legislative and public affairs group have done an excellent job on that front. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think the communities want engagement without these results. So I do think that both are integral parts of this program.
And understand that the community was involved in writing the CERPs from the very beginning. So as she said, it's integral, it's entwined. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hi, Retta.
So if it was determined that there were some aged trucks or high-emitting trucks on the road, and they needed to be replaced. How does that happen? Are there, I know it's in the city's Green New Deal too, to have new, low-emitting or non-emitting trucks on the road by a certain date. So how does that happen? Are there incentives with this money? Oh, good.
Yes, so I would answer that on two fronts. So number one, our incentive programs are meant to achieve emission reductions above and beyond what our rules require or what CARB rules require, right? So if, say for example, if a truck owner is just trying to get a compliant truck, then they would not qualify for an incentive program. However, if they are interested in turning in that old truck for something that is cleaner than what is required, then they may qualify for an incentive program. And so basically the impetus is on the truck owner or the fleet owner to apply for these incentive programs, provide that information about, how many trucks are they looking to replace, what technologies they're interested in replacing them with, and what our staff do is that they calculate, say, okay, we got 100 proposals, right? Well, which are proposals that might be the most beneficial or perhaps most cost effective as well, right? Where can we get the most emission reductions for this dollar amount that we've been allocated?
Let's see, Raphael.
So I just wanted to add to it. And this is like, so my concern was, in thinking about this whole incentivizing program, it's great to incentivize, but then you also have an enforcement component to it as well. So that was one of the things that I was trying to really push forward in our group there at the Boyle Heights East LA West Commerce group, was to bring in CARB and have their peaks system. We had a presentation here where they literally go out onto the road and actually gauge, not only have the license plate reader, but they also monitor the air emissions coming out from the dirty trucks and pull them over and literally go through that whole inspection process just to make sure that the trucks are in compliance. So I think, you got to take the sweet honey, and at the same time, you got to give them a little castor oil too. So both produces a good positive result for the community, and that's the approach we need to take. I like castor oil. Well, yeah. I mean, I remember back in the day.
Thank you for that, Raphael. No, thank you for that. We really appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Gina. Great presentation. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Gosh, for filling in on the questions. Okay. Our next presentation is an overview of our Environmental Justice Conference. As you all know, this was our 5th conference that we've had, and by far one of our most successful conferences, which is what you want to do. You want to raise the bar each year, and we continue to do that. Alicia Rodriguez is our Senior Public Information Specialist, but she's also our EJ Specialist. So we're going to let her talk about our conference. Thank you, Alicia.
Thanks, Fabian. Okay, so today, as Fabian mentioned, I'll be talking about the 5th Annual Environmental Justice Conference, this year titled Building Alliances and Progressive Solutions. And so what we really wanted to highlight is, again, the community-focused strategies and community engagement that has been happening for the past year. So I'll get into that a little bit further. So the conference is put on together through the Environmental Justice Community Partnership, as we call it EJCP. So through that program, we are able to plan this annual conference. As Fabian mentioned, each year we get more and more interest in it, and it keeps expanding. So it was at the Center at Cathedral Plaza in downtown LA. And it's a half-day conference. We've tried full-day conferences, half-day conferences, and what we found is that a half-day, 1, 2 o'clock is the sweet spot. After that, we tend to lose engagement from a lot of folks. So as of right now, we're keeping it at a one-day conference, a one-day half conference. We are open to expanding it longer. We've gotten requests to make it longer, but others say shorter. So we're trying to find the sweet spot that works for everyone. And this year we had 4 breakout sessions, a plenary session and a keynote speaker, and we had probably over 300 people in attendance. The conference began this year at 8 a.m. with a breakfast and networking. We found that from other conferences, one way we could improve was to really build on the networking component, tie people together, and really spearhead that effort. So that's what we did this year. And we also had sponsors be available. So before the doors opened, everyone made their way around and got information. Some of the tables there included CARB, Metro, SCAG, LADWP, and LAWA, and more others. The welcome and the right to breathe video. The MC this year was Victor Pacheco from Community Coalition in South Los Angeles. He did a phenomenal job. It was one of his first events that he MC'd. And the welcome was from Dr. Burke. We also had former Senator Vanessa Delgado and Mayor Judith Mitchell in attendance as well. So it was nice to have the support from the board. There were 4 breakout sessions, as I mentioned. To the left, we have a picture from one of the breakout sessions called Tapping the Power of Youth. And it was moderated by Jose. Do you know his last name?
I just blinked on it.
His name is Jose Trinidad Castañeda. So I also have these at the entrance. These were the programs for the EJ conference. If you're interested in seeing who are part of the breakout panels, the plenary session, and just descriptions of each breakout session, you can also find them in here. But he's a very engaged youth member from our Youth Leadership Advisory Council. I think there's been about 5 meetings, but the goal is to really engage anyone that's part of the YLAC, Youth Leadership Advisory Council. We also have the Environmental Justice Advisory Council and Environmental Justice Advisory Group. And I'll get into it further, but Dr. Jill Johnston, who is a part of EJAG here, served on the plenary panel. So we're really trying to incorporate everyone that advises on environmental justice here at AQMD as well. And to the right, we have the breakout session on community voices and collaboration. This breakout session stemmed from applications that were submitted to us for them to present on an environmental justice project, research project, or initiative that they've started. And so that was the most attended breakout session of all of them.
Before you leave, that young man on the left, Jose, if you live in Fullerton, he's running for city council. This leadership group is a group of kids 18 to 30, and they are on the ball. It really lets you know that we have a future. Just wanted to let you know that about Jose. Dynamite workshop it was.
So the other workshop, the one to the left, is Community Science, Pathways to Community Science, and that was moderated by Luis Olmedo from CCV. And that one really focused on different work that's being done as it relates to community science, but also how you can be engaged, how we are all community scientists. And so that was very interesting. And the one to the right was a screening of the Estamos Aquí community documentary that was put together from youth from the Youth Leadership Institute. And they highlighted environmental justice issues happening mostly in near the Salton Sea, so the North Shore community, and they really talked about the families that live there and how they call that home, how they call that particular community home, and different things that they're dealing with on a daily basis. But these youth filmmakers really put, really highlights the talent that is out there. And so one of the things that did come out of that breakout session was that I think they're going to screen that film at a EPA meeting, at a California EPA. I don't know if it's a board meeting, but so they were able to get contacts from other folks there to really spread the word on their work. The keynote address was Los Angeles City Councilwoman Nuri Martinez. It was very insightful, but she is the former executive director for Pacoima Beautiful, an environmental justice organization. And luckily, we did have a large group of community members and also staff from Pacoima Beautiful there. So that was a nice connection there. The plenary session focused on community-focused strategies. And so that was moderated by Wayne Nastry. And we had 3 folks, one of them being Dr. Jill Johnston from EJAG. And so really one of the things that was highlighted was AB 617, the community engagement aspect, and also what other programs throughout the region are currently being worked on. And there was also a Q&A portion. So with that is a brief overview of the conference, but I do want to pose to you, we haven't started planning for 2020, but I'm sure starting November, we're going to hit the ground running with it. But before that, we really want to bring it back to you all as far as what are some of the things that you would like to see incorporated into a conference like this? And if you have any suggestions for us moving forward.
Thank you, Alicia. Very, very enlightening. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Oh, we do. And I was not looking up to see who went first, so I'm going to start over here and work my way around. Okay, Retta.
First of all, I think I've attended most of them, not all maybe, but I'm really sorry I couldn't make this one. It looks like a great meeting was had by all. But I'm also wondering, since the intent was building alliances and progressive solutions, I'm curious, were there any progressive solutions identified and what were they?
So that's a great question. One of the things that we did this year that's different from other years is in each breakout session we had a board. So any type of suggestions or kind of how I said, one of the examples I gave was how they were going to show the video to Cali, PA and spread the word on that work. We do have a ongoing document with notes of collaborations, with notes on things that we came back with to do. So we have that. We'll be working on that through December, and so we'll put something out of different action items and things that came out from each, mostly breakout sessions, but also during the plenary session.
I think when we talk about climate crisis, global warming, and that sort of thing, being able for people to focus on solutions is an uplifting aspect of it. So I think whatever we can do more in that regard also helps people feel a little hopeful, and also engages them a little more in actually helping create solutions. So maybe more focus on that would be great.
Great idea. Thank you, Retta. Thank you. Mary.
Thank you. So obviously you know where I'm going to come from. I wanted to attend. The timing is wonderful if you're not living anywhere where we are. So trying to come in from the Inland Empire into downtown Los Angeles for an 8 o'clock meeting is like a total nightmare, because I've missed plane rides out of LAX, depending on what happens with the traffic. So then my question is going to end up being, is there plans to hold one of these conferences outside of the greater Los Angeles area and maybe hold it towards maybe Palm Springs, if anything? Because if you hold it in Palm Springs, then the possibility ends up being that you would have both San Bernardino and Riverside and those two areas, plus you would be able to pick up the Salton Sea area because at least it's not a major drive for them in order to attend something like this. I mean, I think these things are really, really good. But you know, one of the things that I've always stressed as I've sat here for the last couple of years is so much of the concentrated effort and so much of the contact and the community outreach is done understandably towards the Los Angeles area because of the population and because of the concerns there. But for the greater part, a lot of the communities in the Inland Empire region start to feel left out. Like we don't really get a chance to have that connection with the AQMD. We know about it. I think that we should also take advantage of the fact that as I pass it almost every single day, the car building that's going up on Iowa and University at MLK, it's going up pretty fast. And there's significant development at that point. It's not going to be that long before it's pretty much up and running. And the fact that it's there is major. So I think that we should probably like maybe take advantage of the fact that it is there and maybe think about having a future conference area outside of the greater metropolitan Los Angeles. So
Absolutely, Mary. We totally feel you on that. I just gotta, we're very sensitive when it comes to the areas where we, go. I don't see us having an environmental justice conference in Palm Springs. We would get hit left and right. But I do like the idea of the car building. I do like the idea of moving it around. This year, for the first time, we provided a bus from San Fernando Valley. It was a wonderful success. So that's something that we wanted to offer again, only now in more counties, so that we do provide that accessibility. Have no problem with moving it around. LA has just seemed to work for everybody. So now, if that's the case, then getting out to where you are and offering that bus service, working with our legislators, making that happen. Absolutely, because that's our concern too. We're not getting to the people that really need to be here, that really need to be there and hear what we're saying and participating. No, we hear you, definitely. Alicia?
I want to echo what Fabian said, but definitely about the bus. Luckily, City of Los Angeles was able to donate a bus from the San Fernando Valley, but we are looking to expand that. And the community members that attended the conference this year they were so happy. And it was great to have them there too, participating. So that's not to say that there weren't other community members there, but it was nice to have that bus come in because they wouldn't have been there otherwise. So we're open to Riverside area. It depends. We have to find a venue. We have to see who's attending and so forth. It's not out of the question. It's something we have on our radar, and thank you for bringing that up. We haven't chosen a location or even looked at locations yet, so we'll probably put some locations in Riverside and see how that would work.
okay, well, part of my suggestion at Palm Springs, I tend to forget that'd be like the college trustees meeting in Las Vegas. I get it. And it's probably not something that everybody's going to want to hear.
I'm all for it.
Exactly. However, Palm Springs came to mind only because I think it has the venues
Yeah.
that are available.
Yeah.
It
Would.
has the space that would accommodate
It
something
would.
like this. But then Indio would also. Some of the smaller ones like Quinta and Palm Desert, maybe they don't. But that was why I brought Palm
Sure,
Springs up.
sure.
But if you're going to mention going back towards Riverside, finding a venue is not a problem because you have to remember some of us have facilities available at some of the representative locations that we come from. So, I mean, I happen to know that, without getting in trouble, the Riverside Community College District has a considerable amount of facility space that we have that we could utilize. And that would be something that we would, I'm sure, be able to present as a partnership towards a community service like that. So it's there, it's available to you to be able to do that. It's just a matter of looking at it and then asking us.
Sure, but that's what we want. That's why it's up there. We want these kinds of suggestions and ideas because we don't know everything. Almost, no, we don't know everything, and we really count. That's a great suggestion. Great suggestion, and that would be a great partnership to create. And that's what happens when we go out. Now, when we do our workshops, we are out in all of the counties. We're out in San Bernardino, we're out in Riverside, we're down in Orange County in the areas that they have EJ. So we're all around. The conference just happened to work so far there. Doesn't mean it can't be changed. Absolutely doesn't mean it can't be changed. I'm all for that.
Yeah, and
And
also,
this is going to be too small of a venue anyway. I'm sorry. We outgrew the cathedral, so we'd have to change next year anyway.
just keeping in mind that we have folks from Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, LA. So we found that it's more central at that point. But again, we're open to suggestions and we'll definitely be in contact with you regarding the venue.
Okay, who's next? David.
Thank you. On the, well, first thing, I want to make sure, the Estamos Aquí video, is that available anywhere on YouTube or anything? Do I have to get a private screening?
It's a private screening.
We had to pay for it.
There is a 2-minute
Trailer.
a trailer that I can send you all just so you can see how it is, but
Okay, yeah, I might want to,
Sure.
Yeah,
We'll make
share
certain
with
we get that out to all of you, the link out to everyone.
thank you. On the venues for the future, I mean, I did make it for an hour and a half.
Yes, thank you.
And it was a wonderful, well attended. I think I saw one panel with Dr. Jill
Yes.
Johnson on it, and she was spectacular. She represents us well, and USC for whatever that's worth. I mean, it's a central location. It's transportation friendly,
Yes.
and I did do a lot of metroing that day, which doesn't get me there on time, but it is central. So whatever you do for the future, make sure it's available on transportation hub. Get people
Always.
out of their cars. You know, if it's in Riverside, just make sure it's on some sort of route. And then, of course, bringing buses in is always a good idea.
Yeah, the buses was a win-win. Got cars off the freeway, plus it enabled people to get here.
Perfect. Question on these events in terms of money. I don't know how much it costs. You know, it seems like an expensive event, but are things being sponsored or leveraged in any sort of way? I mean, I don't know if the cathedral, gives you a great deal, or if they say, well, pay us, or if any other underwriters are helping with the event. But I would say that that'll be an opportunity as well.
We do go out and we do solicit sponsorships. So we do. It is somewhat underwritten, not totally, and we have a budget for it. But yeah, we're always looking for sponsors, always.
Okay, and yeah, I'll keep that on my radar screen. And then lastly, with the stuff that you're getting back from the breakout sessions, can you bring it back to this group?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, we will.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, David, for that. Raphael.
Thank you. So I have a suggestion on venue.
Okay.
Location,
Okay.
Ontario. Easy to get to from Orange County, easy to get to from LA. You're going counter traffic. It's a good commute in from Riverside, San Bernardino, and all that other stuff. And it's transportation like, warehouse, large, oversized warehouse. So, one of the topics could be, talking about, the transportation and logistic and warehousing and all that other stuff. That might be a good place for it.
Okay.
Metrolink is real convenient to Ontario, especially in and around the airports. I'm sure there's plenty of venues and whatnot that are available. I think it's good. Less time on overtime, for staff, heading back out. I'm just saying, let's be real. Okay. But then the other thing was, the other suggestion was on the breakout sessions, just to lengthen them. I think they were just too short. We just didn't get around to do some real good work, I think, you know, based on the panel that I was sitting on.
Yeah, how could I forget? I'm so sorry,
You did, but that's
Raphael.
okay. That's all right. It's all right. I'm sorry.
Did we cut his
no,
short?
I mean,
Community science.
Yeah. Oh, we forgot he was there. That's
yeah,
right.
I was. You know, I'm just sitting in the back.
That
but
I
anyways.
kept thinking that. I couldn't remember what panel.
Yeah, that's okay. And I was sitting at the table, you know, for panel discussions, you know, a little bit by myself, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's something we did here as well, is more time.
Yes, more time, just because there was a lot of people in the audience that came to the panel breakout session, hoping to really discuss, you know, some of the issues and stuff that they were going through, and you know, tap the expertise that was on the panel and experiences and whatnot, and then get specific feedback on issues that they were dealing with in particular. So I think offering up more time, I think that would make the conference that much more successful.
Sure.
So if we're going to do anything, lengthen the amount of time that we're in session versus, you know, little presentations up in, you know, in the welcoming and all of this stuff. I know there's a lot of pomp and circumstance for, you know, this conference in general, but yeah, more
you.
time on breakout sessions. We may, you know, end up going until 2 o'clock. So a 3/4 of a day conference.
Sure.
That would be great.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Can you expand on the definition of community science? What does that mean?
Sure. Go ahead.
You want me? Yay! I know I really was. So some of the you know, community scientists was just making the public aware that you don't have to be like a true scientist in order to go out there and actually be involved in your community. There's data that's available. You could do some research on your own, as many of us have. You know, you don't have to be like a trained doctor or anything else like that. You can actually go out, leverage the data that's already available on AQMD's website or DTSE's website or anything else like that, and bring it to the attention of your officials. You know, like I was saying before and earlier, I was like, there's a lot of data that's out there. It's just not made public because it's on some sort of like research site, or it's on a small, you know, community college site or something like that. And so there's a lot of research out there, but it doesn't get into the public eye because it's just, you know, it's just more data. It's noise in the background. But if we can pull some very specific data, key data points out, we could really bring a lot of stuff to the attention of the officials and stuff. Like I'll give you a good for instance. So when I first started in all of this, I was aware of, you know, AQMD's requirement for some industries that they needed to submit an annual emissions report. And so I knew that, and then so I went ahead and reviewed all kinds of data, and then actually brought to light when they were doing some initial air monitoring studies on the Exide stuff. I was able to point out, hey, why is it that year over year that this company is spewing out, you know, lead, you know, into the community? But not only lead, because that's what they were focused on, but the arsenic, the benzene, and all these other really nasty components by the hundreds of tons a year. And so it was information that I was able to ascertain. And then there was an irregularity in some data. And so I was able to call that out as well and refocus a lot of the attention back onto that particular company. So it's those kind of things that we can do, especially now that we are trained in operating the AQMD's Find website. We're able to go in there and really hone in on various companies and stuff that we have certain concerns about, and then start looking at the data.
Yeah, and also now more than ever, there's equipment, air monitors, water sampling that you can buy that before wasn't available or accessible. So it's just really getting the word out there to the community and letting them know.
We'll send you all a link on information on community science, general information on it. It's quite fascinating, actually. I believe we have some public comment on this item. Ma'am, would you like to come to the microphone?
Commenting that I'm with CalSTART and the HVIP incentive program team. We'd love to sponsor this event next year. Especially, I think it provides a good opportunity to do education about incentive programs.
Don't knock her over getting her card, guys, okay? To the mic. Just step a little closer to the mic. Yeah,
Oh,
you'll be
hi.
okay. There you go.
And I think that I think this particular type of event, looking at how wonderfully well attended it was, is such an excellent opportunity to educate about incentives because they're so complicated. You have your local incentives and your district incentives and your state incentives and your federal incentives, and everybody I've talked to that does community outreach and community organizing wants to be knowledgeable so that they can be sort of a technical assistance resource for their community members, but we could use this, I think, probably as an opportunity to maybe do some education around how to present it and then think about strategically, like, who in your community is best suited for this type of funding and how can we get it delivered to them.
Right. No, thank you. We appreciate it. We certainly see an opportunity for partnership. Great. Thank you. Oh, okay. Alicia just told me we can get the J conference video link to you all too, so that you can see what we Facebook Live.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Nikki O'Coop. I work for CalSTART, which is an organization that does lots of clean transportation work, but also administers 2 of the state-funded incentive programs. And so I work very closely here with the Air District because they also have incentive programs that can sometimes be combined, but also sometimes can't. And knowing those nuances can be a little bit complicated, but it's so important to, I think, small businesses in our community to learn about it.
Great. Thank you. Any comment on that? Okay, any more questions for Alicia? Okay, then we'll move on to member updates. We started here before. Let's start over there. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Do you want me to do the vaping thing now? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah? All right. I wanted to give a quick update. I normally do acknowledge that outer air is different sometimes addressed in regulatory than inner air, but nonetheless, there is an important issue that's come up, and it does have a very important environmental justice component to it, and that is the latest issues that have come up with vaping. And vaping specifically, because it's cheaper than regular cigarette smoking, is being targeted to more, to underserved communities as a way for them to get their nicotine high, and unfortunately now their marijuana high as well. So it certainly does have some pertinence to our group here for what's going on. So what we've discovered is there is now, the CDC has now labeled a new disease. It's called EVALI, E-V-A-L-I, e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. And basically what has been going on is over the last few months, people have started to have some very serious lung problems where they may get intubated and they may have to go to the hospital from vaping products. Let me give you some quick numbers on this. As of October 15th, there's been about 33 confirmed vaping-related deaths in 24 states. There's been almost 1,500 vaping-related lung injuries across 49 states. And those are the ones that came in, and those are the ones where they were identified as vaping and not erroneously diagnosed as a pneumonia or some other issue. So I'm sure there are far more than what we're seeing. And in all of these cases, the patients have had a history of vaping, but no one chemical has been found as the primary cause. So very important, and just as a take home for this committee, we have a product now that's causing serious injury. We're waiting for the final results of the tobacco survey that's been done for 2019, but a shocking 27% of teenagers are vaping or have tried vaping. So this is not just a little thing. If if you have a kid, they probably know someone who's vaping, and it's being marketed to them, unfortunately. I will bring updates when we figure out what's going on. Right now, there's a fallacy that this is only associated with marijuana-related vaping. That is not true. About 10% of these unfortunate individuals have only used nicotine-based vaping products. So I'll bring an update when we have it. But for right now, the bottom line is, if you have a vaping store or people who are vaping in the community, or if the vaping companies are coming out to do community outreach to schools where they tell you, oh, everything's okay, just don't vape THC. It's happening, believe me. Please be on the lookout, and please, I know we work more with trucks and ports and other things, but this is an important one as well. And they probably will find a correlation between vaping and living in a community with high amounts of pollution. So I'll bring some updates on that. But for right now, this is something new. It's something very serious. And actually, a lot of health organizations are having to alter their protocols. I now have to ask every single teenager who comes in sick, have you vaped? Because that's going to change the way that I treat them. That little cough is no longer just a cough. That could be a kid in the ICU within 2 or 3 days. So it's kind of ridiculous. But anyway, I'll bring more when I have it, and if anyone has questions, let me know. All right.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. It's just kind of, yeah, it really is. It is. Because I see people around here, adults around here vaping.
Yeah, and it really is just, the issue here, I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but you're superheating a substance at various temperatures, and I'm sure Dr. Beeson can talk to it more than I can. It's like, I mean, a good analogy, if you bake a cake at one temperature, you're going to get a different product than if you bake it at a hotter temperature. And the reality is, you're doing a chemistry experiment in your lungs every time you inhale from one of these things, and there's no way to predict. No, we can't possibly do enough studies at every single burning temperature to see exactly what's going in people's lungs. It's a horrible product, but for right now, everyone just needs to be really careful.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Hi there.
Yeah, maybe from an epidemiology point of view, we have several of our PhD students that are still working on some manuscripts for the exposure to long-term exposure to ambient air pollution. So those are in the works, and whenever we get down to a PDF and through the peer review process, I'll bring those here. But
Oh, thank you.
we have several manuscripts working on. We have one study that is looking at the United States and how does it control for dietary intake. So people are consuming high intake of antioxidants, and how does that mitigate some of the oxidizing effects of things like oxidizing ozone and NO2. So those papers are in the work.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
from Loma Linda.
Thank you. All right, Carrie.
Are we going down the line?
Yep.
No updates from me at this point. Next time.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Rita. No updates? All righty. Mary?
Not an update, but a quick question, Dr. Hassan. So at what level, at what point does something like the vaping become significant enough for us to be able to, like right now, RCC's campuses are smoke-free. I mean, and the students are the ones that have basically put that into play, and so you can't smoke anywhere on the campuses of the colleges. But at what point does the vaping aspect and what it is creating and the harm that it's doing, at what point does that become significant enough for that to be taken on the same level as the cigarette smoke?
That's a fair question. I think now is perfectly fine. We don't know enough about it. We don't know the long-term effects. If you'd like me to give a more detailed talk later on popcorn lung and all the other things in there, Raphael was mentioning cadmium, benzene, lead. These are all things that you can find in some of the vaping products that are out there. So the problem is you have a product that can be made in someone's basement in a kettle, or it can be regulated by a company. And we're just not sure of it. And there are actually a lot of campuses out there that are including vaping as part of their no smoking policy. And that's what I'd strongly recommend, because it is also a gateway instrument into nicotine and other addiction as well. So if the students probably need to just put that on the list and get it off their campus.
Yeah, Loma Linda University is smoke-free, vaping-free for the whole campus.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great information. Thank you. Okay, Daniel, you have an update?
Yes, I found out that UCR recently got a grant of $16 million from the National Institute of Health. And I asked, one of their projects is to study the dust problems in the Salton Sea because of the cause of asthma, because of that. And I asked the question of if they were coordinating with AQMD, because I know AQMD has done a lot of research in that area. They didn't go into detail, so wondering, do you know what coordination there's going to be? And I imagine there must be a lot of research that you've done that they could concentrate some of those $16 million in another area.
No, I'm not aware that we're coordinating with them on any grant at this time. No. Mm-mm. No, but thank you. We'll look into that. Hi, Donald.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My community focus has primarily been street and road disintegration and the effects from the airborne particles that blow from people driving down the street and street sweeping and other things. But another concern of mine is gardeners blowing dust, airborne dust. And though we've had a change in local city government in Compton, we hadn't had any actions or any changes that I could say have been progress for any of the street and road disintegration or any new information pertaining to the dust particles and what they contain from streets that were paved back in the 50s. And what chemicals that we are being exposed to through the disintegration of the streets and roads in our
Your mic is off.
through the disintegration of the asphalt in the community area as far as residential areas, and that's been my focus. But I haven't had any updates.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. There you go. How you doing?
I don't have any updates, but I do have a question. I've kind of read the new wildfire emergency regulations that are coming up, and I believe that they use Air Now for their PM 2.5
Monitors.
data as to when you would be putting on respiratory protection for outside workers and things like that. How accurate is that compared to AQMD's data?
Geez, I don't know the answer. Do we have? It's okay. Left
I
us.
mean, were you involved with any of that, or is that just a completely separate?
I think it's completely separate.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but we try to coordinate that WAP, but it's, they're usually under the central command and they're in charge.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
A couple things going on in the Baldwin Hills. We're undergoing the comment period for the Community Standard District, which is the overlay zone for the Baldwin Hills area and the oil field that's operating there. And, what this overlay zone does is deal with sights, sounds, and smells, essentially. So we have a lot of interaction with air monitoring as well as ground movement and the like. The comment period is open, so I'm just kind of telling everybody here, if you're concerned about oil drilling in neighborhoods and you take a look at the Baldwin Hills Inglewood Oil Field website or the County Planning Department, it is an open period for comments. They take comments from everywhere with regards to how to better improve the zoning ordinance in the Baldwin Hills. It happens every 5 years. So the information is available on county website, the Baldwin Hills Community Standards District. overlay zone. Also, can't read my notes. Oh, we're lucky to have SNAPS, the Air Resources Board has deployed resources into the Baldwin Hills for the oil drilling situation there. They've done a couple of community meetings already, and I've helped work with them on coordinating the outreach. They're actually looking for sites to place their mobile stations and park and do some monitoring. That is going to tie in nicely with the county's public health's community health survey study that's taking place. So they're doing a lot of community engagement and asking people about their rates of cancer and asthma and those outdoor influenced pollutants and how that impacts their life and their quality of life. And then from that information, trying to get some baseline to figure out the impacts of living near an oil field, which is the burning question for everyone in terms of the Baldwin Hills and any other urban oil fields or urban oil drilling sites. So very happy to know that the information is being gathered and the data is being gathered, and we have about $1 million worth of resources being deployed by SNAPS, essentially, that we didn't have 5 years ago when we first did the first study. So at least the data will be there, and we'll create a baseline to work from there.
There you go. Thank you.
We have, well, they're looking for where downwind to locate the mobile unit and take samples south, east, west, north, and so they're calling me saying, hey, that empty lot over there, is that, can you put us in touch with the owner? And, that kind of stuff, that kind of site.
Okay, Raphael, did you have an update? Oh, yes.
I never get this right. Neighborhood Air Petroleum Monitoring. What is it? SNAPS, the acronym stand for? Somebody.
I
Jill?
should know.
I know.
I would look it up, but I can't even read.
We're
But
Googling
it's
really
SNAPS,
quickly.
but it's I know the neighborhood, associated with petroleum sites, but I don't know what the first S starts for.
Well, that was close enough, but we're Googling it. We'll have it for you.
The study of neighborhood air petroleum sources.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, yes. So, update. So I'm working really hard in order to do what I was suggesting earlier about bringing other agencies based on the AB 617 stuff, the work that we're doing. So I've been talking with some of the high-level officials within the Bureau of Street Services in order to bring street sweeping into the Boyle Heights community that hasn't been street swept for decades. Yeah. And so, any help would be greatly appreciated, either via AQMD or your husband. I'm just saying. No. It's not his council district, but I need some assistance here. But in any case, and so I'm looking to resolve. So I'm working to resolve potential funding issues, operation and maintenance costs, and so I'm looking for avenues right now for funding sources. So, like last night, we were discussing the potential of using maybe some AB 617s because of the amount of black carbon that's on the ground and the resuspension and all other stuff. I'm also going to be meeting, hopefully with the council office, the local council office for, in addition to, I'm hoping to meet with the LA County Flood Control District in order to tap Measure W funds. I've already presented that to the BSS, which is Bureau of Street Services, officials and stuff, and hopefully they'll be able to write some grants or at least proposals so that we can get grant funding. Because not only does Measure W pay for the initial equipment costs, but also O&M for the duration of the Measure W funds, which is 20 years. So I think, by doing that, we can get some real action going on pretty quick, and then we can actually report back and see measurable results through the air quality monitoring and all that stuff. Okay. So that's what I've been working on.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Where are we on the agenda? Are we at public comment? Yeah, that was member updates. Any questions or comments on any of the updates? Any other business? Now we're at public comment. Any public comment? All right. Retta, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Follow-up, it's mind-boggling to me that Boyle Heights has some streets that haven't been swept. Are you not a part of the city of Los Angeles?
No. That's a short answer, but no, really. So there are communities within the city of Los Angeles that have, that don't have street sweeping. So there's many communities actually. So the Valley, that's one of the gripes of, Pacoima and those, East Valley areas and whatnot. And some areas in South LA haven't been swept in quite some time. But again, it's all about squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we need to be squeakier in order to get some action. That's why we have the the traffic congestion. That's why we don't have a lot of oversight in and around, because a lot of other communities are being more attention is going to them. Like downtown, it's it's a happening thing. It's so we just need community development to come and help, and some more attention. So that's why I encourage in any of the communities that you guys represent, there's other things that can be done, and other meetings that can be had, and that's why I'm hoping. So with that interagency partnership, we can build those small groups that we can go and get some action done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add on to that. We have the same issue in Baldwin Village's Gardens, which is the formerly known as the Jungle, and it revolves around congestion and parking. And so the sweep sweepers won't go on certain streets because the cars are there. So it's the interagency discussion of like, okay, how do we coordinate with parking and Bureau of Street Services and get all that together so we can move cars and that would get 80% of the job done, maybe 40%. I don't know how what percentage, but it would help a lot. But the rest of it, some of it's neglect, but a lot of it is just we don't drive down that street because
the cars still parked there on street cleaning days. Yeah. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Raphael. So we've asked for public comment. No public comment. Our next meeting date is January the 24th, but in the meantime, we'll send you that link to the EJ conference for community science. Is there anything else we were going to send them? I think that's...
So I have the Estamos Aquí clip, and also I got word that we have the screening dates, information on community science, and those are the two things that I have.
Great. Anything else? All right. Well, with that, you all have a great, great holiday season coming up, and we'll see you in 2020.